Monday. It's great to see everyone, even though I can't really see you. And wonderful to participate in this way. So thank you for joining us. I think we have about 275 people online. So I have a window here where I can see some of your questions. My colleague Fahad Mismar is curating your questions and then sending them over, and then I can look at them. So let me just take a look at your questions so we can get going. That's a good question, and my answer to that would be no. So if if we focus on the words of Buddha, he says that the key to happiness is the elimination of desire. And the second thing actually that the Buddha also says is that there is no suffering in this world. And it is, we're not going to go into in this call or, exactly what he meant with that, but, there's a large body of work you can look at, which would explain what the Buddha was thinking. So, so I think that first of all, it's always important to be happy and satisfied at all times with your circumstances, even though you may have a lot of ambitions and drive and desire for different circumstances, that's fine. But I don't think you need to take an approach of sacrifice, reducing your quality of life or in any way your success. So I think you can set up your situation so you can achieve both. It does not need to be an either or choice. Yeah, COVID has been obviously a great challenge globally. Um, my personal opinion is that when the world looks back 10 years or 20 years from now on the decisions that were made by various countries and governments on how they dealt with COVID, I think the people in the future will judge them poorly. So I mean, it's a new area. We have not dealt with these things before. And so governments can be forgiven for the direction they've gone. But I think they have grossly overreacted and actually taken steps that have, in my opinion, caused more harm than good. So one of the problems with COVID is that the nature of lockdowns, and the World Health Organization just came and said this too, is the lockdowns are significantly increasing poverty around the world. The have-nots are a lot worsely affected than the haves. I mean, most people who have white collar jobs, most people who are, let's say, Dakshana, Dan, Alums, who are working, generally speaking, they have not been very affected from a job point of view in terms of having a job and so on. What the people who have been affected a lot have been the daily wage earners, the migrant workers, and the people who don't have anything, and who are very dependent on just day-to-day survival. And so the actions that governments around the world have taken, this is the same in the US and India and other places, has very negatively affected the have-nots. And also, I think what the World Health Organization is saying now is that we should not be focused on lockdowns. What we should be focused on is hygiene, social distancing, masks, and education of people on how to keep themselves as healthy as possible. And unfortunately, that has not happened. Some countries in the world have followed that approach. One example is Sweden. Sweden did do all these things, and they did not go down the path of shutdowns or lockdowns. And now cases are skyrocketing all over Europe, but they are very much lower than they were in Sweden. And so I think the Swedish model I wished had been followed more. The other thing about COVID that is not happening, and this is especially true in the United States, may not be true in India, is that anyone who dies of COVID is counted as a COVID death. It doesn't matter if that person had 5 other health conditions and that those 5 other health conditions may have contributed to their fatality. So, for example, if someone is really old, they have diabetes or heart disease, obesity, and so on, their risk factors for dying are higher. But no one is really doing a calculus of kind of parsing that number. We are just given these high-level numbers saying, 200,000 people have died in the US. I would love to see another number which said that if there was no COVID, what would have been the expected life expectancy of those 200,000 people? Because a large number of those people who have died are elderly with other health issues. So clearly, COVID has accelerated their death, but in many cases, it may have accelerated by a few weeks or a few months. And that calculus is not being done because it is politically incorrect to do that calculus. And I think that's a negative, not to have transparency and openness about that. And the third thing that is not happening, which is one of my biggest grievances about the way COVID is being handled, is there are many, many side effects of doing lockdowns and shutdowns, which have extremely harmful effects. Dakshana scholars have seen some of that with the schools and the coaching shutdown. But the thing is that when you take away livelihood of people who are very poor, you are going to cause depression. You're going to cause suicides to increase. You're going to cause domestic violence to go up. You're going to cause child abuse to go up. There's a whole bunch of mental illnesses that come up. So all of these things are happening and have been happening for the last several months. But I don't see any statistics or any attempt by governments to gather this data or even give it some weight. So I'll give you an example of kind of 2 different ways, 2 different US agencies deal with the cost of a human life. So we have the nuclear regulatory industry in the United States, which regulates nuclear power plants. And we have the FAA, which regulates, the Federal Aviation Authority, which regulates, private and commercial flying of airplanes in the US. So the FAA has taken an approach which says that a human life has a specific and finite value. And currently the FAA in the United States values a human life, I think, at around $4 million, 28 crores, approximately, maybe 30 crores. And so that $4 million number is very relevant because if they identify some problem in a particular airplane, let's say some model of some airplane has some issue, they will do a calculation and say, okay, if we don't fix this problem over the next 10 or 20 years, how many people are expected to die? Like how many, will we have any crashes and how many people might die? So let's say they come up with that if we do nothing, 100 people could die. So what the FAA will do is they will multiply 100 by 4 million, 400 million, and then they will ask the industry to make changes to that aircraft, but they will make sure that the cost of that change is less than 400 million. If, for example, the changes would cost 10 times that, let's say $4 billion, the FAA will not make the recommendation to make the change. So the result of this, in my opinion, very prudent policy is flying is very safe and flying is very cheap. Now, if we go to the nuclear industry in the US, the approach that the nuclear regulator has taken is that the cost of a human life is infinite. And so therefore, what happens is that when a nuclear plant is built, they really have no budget or limitations on all the things that have to be done from an engineering point of view to make that plant never ever have an issue. It's kind of like if you take a microwave and say that this microwave can never fail. This microwave can never stop working. So microwave costs $50 or $100, you can get a good microwave. If you put that condition on the microwave, that can never fail and it can never go bad, the microwave will cost $10,000. It will become very, very expensive when you change the spec like that. And that's what we have done in the nuclear industry. And so the result has been, like, for example, in California where I live, there are 2 nuclear power plants and both have been shut down. No accidents happened. They were perfectly fine functioning plants, but there's a hysteria around what could happen. And so in the past, the United States could have had a lot less pollution, a lot less coal, a lot less carbon going into the atmosphere if they had taken more, pragmatic approaches to regulating nuclear. So when we look at COVID, I get the sense that the world has taken an approach which is more similar to the nuclear industry than the aviation industry. And I wish the world had taken an approach which was more like the aviation industry. So that's my take on COVID, and it has caused a lot of challenges. But I think from a Dakshana scholar perspective, we have tried to do a lot of e-classes. We have distributed a lot of tablets, and we've tried in the last several months to do the best we can on that front. Let me look at other questions. So अमरनाथ ऐसा है कि ये तो हमें गीता ने बताया है. We have been instructed on this by the Gita many millennia ago. And the Gita says that you have an obligation to perform your duty, and you have no right to a reward from that duty. All you have is the obligation to perform your duty. So if you follow that modus operandi, so I think the thing between process and outcome is it is normal in the real world that the two may not be correlated every time. So for example, if I create a startup company with venture capital, the odds are very low that that company will become very successful because maybe 95% of venture-backed companies fail. It's normal for them to fail. That's just part of the way they are. And in general, when you start businesses, it's higher risk, and it's perfectly normal that those businesses may not make it. But what the people who started the businesses need to do is do the best job they can to try to make that business work and perform their duty. And the reality is that that first venture may not work or the second venture may not work, but if they follow the process properly and they're trying to learn from each time when they do it, there'll be lessons they learn. So one of the things that happens is that success doesn't teach us anything. It is from failure that we learn. And so we should be very grateful when we have failures, and we should be trying to learn from those failures. So it is not about the outcome. It is all about the process. And so I think that's, and even in my case, I would say the first 2 or 3 ventures I had did not work. Then I had some success. And then even after that, even after Dakshana, I tried to set up another nonprofit called Gandhigiri, which we won't go into here, but it didn't work. But there were a lot of lessons learned from that, and I'm very happy I tried to do that. So that was a endeavor to try to fight corruption in India. So let me continue reading your questions. We now have 540 attendees, which is great to see. Wonderful. I was told that classes at Dakshana Valley in Pune would be starting on October 15th. But since it is already the end of October 15th and someone is asking this question, maybe that has not happened. It must be pretty imminent, but I will find out. And you can maybe contact people at Dakshana Valley and they can tell you. So that's fine. Well, I mean, I think we can have very successful societies where I mean it is normal in societies and countries that a small number of people will be looking to and be focused on giving back. In the United States, I think the United States I find is a very unique place. There is a very strong tradition of helping the unfortunate, helping the have-nots, and giving back. And for large number of Americans, they do not give money because they don't have extra money, but they give their time. They volunteer in soup kitchens, or they volunteer at homeless shelters and different things like that. So they give their time, which is extremely valuable and extremely important. And richer Americans, I think more than any other society in the world, is very generous towards giving towards the have-nots. This is not the case in Europe. It's not the case in India. It's not the case in most parts of the world. But it is changing. I am seeing more and more. So, for example, in India, if we look at the history of giving, the Tata Group for well over a century. I mean, right from the time Jamshedji Tata set up the first plant in Jamshedpur, the first steel plant. The Tata Group has been at the front of leading in terms of giving back. They had many progressive policies for their employees and for that community of Jamshedpur. But since then, with the Tata Trust, they've gone well beyond that, and they've set up a number of institutions in terms of medical and research and so on, where they've been giving back. So I think in India, it is changing. I see more and more of that happening, and I think when people get wealthy or get super wealthy, eventually they come to realize, many of them will come to realize that just passing on that wealth to the next generation may not be the best way to use that wealth, and also may do a disservice to the next generation, because it's not allowing them to really do what they may be best at doing. So I think that is changing, but it's got quite a ways to go. Gandhi used to say that be the change that you wish to see. So I think, Saurabh, you don't need to concern yourself with the fact that most people are not doing this, or why are they not doing this. I think if I were you, what I would focus on is just focus on what you can do. And you don't need money to do things. You can give your time. And that is very valuable as well. And you can give it to a cause that makes sense. It could be helping some kid in your village, maybe get admission in JNV with some coaching or whatever. I mean, you can figure out the cause that makes sense, and that's fine. So there are a couple of things I can say about that. Ek to, there was a Hindi song which, if we were able to all sing together, we could have said, कुछ तो लोग कहेंगे, लोगों का काम है कहना, छोड़ो बेकार की बातें, कहीं बीत ना जाए रहना. Maybe some of you have heard that song. The other thing is that, just like I talked about the Gita with process and outcome, there's a Roman philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, and he said that when we face adversity and when we overcome that adversity, we should be grateful for that, because it makes us a lot better. So adversity is a blessing. So when people criticize us, what we have to do is we have to focus on what Buffett calls the inner scorecard. So judge for yourself whether the actions you have taken are the right actions or the wrong actions. Do not bother with what people are saying. Kuch to log kahenge. So we don't need to be worried about how, or so, the biggest example of this is, if you look at any political leaders around the world, I mean, let's say if we look at Modi ji in India, Prime Minister Modi, are there people criticizing him all the time? There are lots of people who praise him all the time. There are lots of people who criticize him all the time. Sometimes the criticism is not justified. Sometimes the praise is not justified. The correct truth of all of that lies somewhere in the middle of all of that, and the only way someone like Mr. Modi can continue functioning is if he uses an inner scorecard, which is not to focus on what other people are saying, but to focus on what he believes to be right and wrong, and go with that. All right, let me just see what other questions we have here. Well, so like I said earlier, you can start helping and giving back even with zero money. You can give your time. In fact, I think giving your time is more valuable than giving your money. And the second is you can make it extremely small scale. So the size of the initiative doesn't matter. It is the size of the heart that matters. And so every person, even a homeless person on the street, can help somebody else. Everybody can help somebody else. It doesn't matter what your circumstances are. So I would say that you can look around, you can think about what causes make the most sense to you, and then you can pursue that, and that's perfectly fine, and that can work out well. And let's continue on and see. We've got a lot more questions. So this question has come up many times within Dakshana. And I think even like, for example, Colonel Sharma is in favor of us coaching for UPSC. My take has been that, coaching for things like CAT, UPSC, etc. These are programs after you finished your degree. You are already an engineer or a doctor and so on. And my take has been that when you finish your degree, you have resources that are different from what you had when you were going through coaching for JE and so on. So my take has been that for the most part, the people who are trying to prepare for UPSC, etc., have a job or had a job and had the ability to save some money. So I think their economic circumstances for the most part are different. But if we are able to find that there's a kind of group of people who have a high potential of getting in and cracking the UPSC, but who do not have anywhere near the resources to do the prep, and there's a large number of those, we could look at that, sure. But I think the other thing is right now we want to get better at the JE and NEET and scale that and not take our eye off the ball over there for now. So there's a saying in business that I have used, and it has helped me a lot in business. And that saying is that if you want to grow your business, you must narrow your markets. So be more focused. It is a mistake to try to grow your business by trying to broadening the market. If you try to be all things to all people as a business, you will not serve any of them well. So the cornerstone of Dakshana has been to be extremely focused. So when we started, we only focused on JE prep. And for more than 10 years, we just did JE prep. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to get good at it. We wanted to excel at it, and we wanted to create impact. Then we added NEET because it was really similar. JE is PCM and NEET is PCB, so it's pretty similar. And so that was a reasonable addition. Also, both of these fields have high career potential after you get to college. So for example, if Dakshana were to create an initiative which would help identify and groom great poets in India, I mean, that would be a great initiative because, it'd be great to tap the people who would be really good at poetry. The problem is that when we identify and even, provide nurturings and such for poets, their economic circumstances after they're done with us may be the same as it was before. It may not change. So engineering and medical basically have massive, it's a multiplier effort from effort and reward. And it allows Dakshana to be very successful in terms of the resources we put in. If we were to put those resources into poetry or into a commerce stream or into the art stream, we would not have the SOROI, the social return on capital of invested capital that we're looking for, and that's important. So that's why we have tried to stay focused. Well, if this is the real policy at JNV Lucknow, it is very unfortunate. I mean, I would say that what the school is trying to do, it's trying to take an approach which protects and minimizes the odds of a mass infection across the student body. I think that given that the JNVs are boarding schools and the fact that COVID has very limited impact on teenagers, kids from 12 to 18. If it were me running JNV Lucknow, I would not have that policy. I mean, I would try to see if the school can afford to, or there's a place nearby where we can do COVID testing. So if someone shows a fever, maybe then proceed with having them tested. And yeah, if they are tested positive, then I think it makes sense to isolate them and send them, ask the parents to pick them up and so on. I think that may make some sense. But also the thing to remember about COVID is that for large numbers of young people, they're going to be asymptomatic. They're not going to have a fever and they'll be spreading the virus. But that's not the end of the world because it's a young population. So we don't really have elderly people in the JNVs. Even the teaching staff is generally maybe in their 20s or 30s or 40s for the most part. And so I think the risk factors are pretty low. And I wish more places took the FAA approach to dealing with COVID, but people take the nuclear industry approach to dealing with COVID, and such is life. Well, in my teen years and my early 20s, I had a strong interest in dancing, like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever or Grease, two movies I really liked. But those days have long gone. So I think if I were, I mean, the music preference, Kala Chasma is a good song. And then the song in Rais, the Laila song is good. And then Hai Jamalo by Malkeet Singh is good. There are many good songs. And maybe if the mood is right, I might join you. Let's see if that ever happens. All right, let's see if I can find some other good questions. Well, Alok, it looks like you were in the class in Kottayam when I visited you on December 24th on Christmas Eve, and we had the session, and I'm glad to see that the session on compounding has stayed with you. So there is, so humans have difficulty with the concept of compounding because the results are geometric. The results are not a arithmetic progression, they are a geometric progression. And you know, there was a king, you know, I think you guys have heard the story of the guy who created the game of chess. And when he created the game of chess, uh, this king was really happy. He became a addicted chess player, and he told the guy who invented the game that ask for any gift or reward and it'll be yours. So the guy said, "Aisa hai sir, ke I don't want much. Just on the chessboard, put 1 grain of rice on the first square and 2 grains of rice on the second square, and then 4 grains of rice on the third square, and keep doubling the grains of rice with every square till you get to the 64th square. And just give me that rice, and that's all I want." So the king got irritated that he wanted to give this guy some big reward, a lot of gold and money and so on, and all he wanted was a bunch of rice. So he told the wazir in his court, "Okay, measure out his rice for this guy and get him out of my court." So after a few days, the king asked the wazir, "Are we done with that guy with the rice?" He says, "No, sir, abhi calculation chalu hai." He says, "Calculation kyun nahi khatam hua?" So he says that we have almost finished the calculation and we don't have that amount of rice. In the entire kingdom, there is not that amount of rice. He says it is not even there in the whole world. The amount of rice is so high. So the amount of rice that went in the first square is 2 to the power of 0. And second square is 2 to the power of 1. And on the 64th square is 2 to the power of 63. And you add them all together, it is 2 to the power of 64 minus 1. ये तो सब आप सब लोगों को फंडा पता है. Now, when you actually write down that number, 2 to the power of 64 minus 1, and then you convert those grains of rice into kilograms, and then you look at the price per kilogram, that number ends up being $400 trillion. And $400 trillion is the wealth of every man, woman, and child in the entire world. So in the United States, which has 5% of the world population, it has about $100 trillion of wealth. India has less than that. India has maybe 20 trillion or something, a lot more people. So what happened is that that's the power of compounding. That something that is really small became that big. Now, if you take that chessboard and you say that clearly the doubling effect after every square has a huge advantage. Now, let's say Alok is going to finish from IIT Kanpur, and Alok बोल रहे हैं 2023. हमको complicated आंसर मत दीजिए, बस इतना बता दीजिए कि बहुत वेल्थी और बहुत अमीर जल्दी से जल्दी कैसे बन सकते हैं, यही पूछ रहे हैं आलोक. Alok, I'm going to make it worth your while. Now, when I started this call, there were 540 people. They got so bored with my answers that we are left with 395 people. But that's okay. We will give this wisdom to now it has gone down to 392. Matlab, what I just said just turned off 3 people. So we are down to 392 people. So 3 of those people that we just lost, in fact, we just lost 2 more, have no interest in becoming wealthy. I am about to tell you how to become wealthy. And as I'm saying this, people are leaving. But thankfully right now we are, 3 more people left. We were at 395, now we are at 387. 8 people do not, Alok, they do not want to know how to get wealthy. Now it is 385, more people have left. अब मैं क्या बताऊं कैसा ज़माना आ गया है. So the key is to look at that first square on the board and then look at the second square, the doubling, right? The doubling is very important. And if you look at a human life, like Alok, I think was born in 2001. And Alok in 2023 will graduate from IIT Kanpur. Maybe he will make maybe 8 to 10 lakhs a year, or maybe more, we'll see. And he'll be able to save some money out of that 8 to 10 lakhs. Let's say when Alok graduates from IIT, he's able to save 2 lakhs every year. So 6 lakhs for having heavy partying and dancing, and 2 lakhs for saving. And let's say every year he doesn't save anything more than just the 2 lakhs. So his income is going to go up. Maybe in 5 or 7 years, he may be making 20 lakhs, but we are still assuming he's only going to save 2 lakhs. And let's assume that Alok is only able to get about a 10% return on that 2 lakhs. So all he is getting is 10%. Now, the key to compounding is how long does that take for the 2 lakhs to double? So there's something known as rule of 72, which you can ask God Google. God Google will explain rule of 72 to you. But basically you do 72 divided by 10, 7. So if you are getting 10% per year, it is going to take 7 years for the money to double. So Alok will go from the first square to the second square in 7 years. Now let's say Alok lives till he is 92. And he starts this 2 lakhs at 22. So he has 70 years. So 70 years may, every 7 years, he's going to go to the next square. So at the end of 70 years, he will be on the 10th square, which will be a total of 2 to the power 10 minus, well, it'll be 2 to the power 9. But let's say it's 2 to the power 10, just to make it simple. And so 2 to the power 10 is 1024. So let's throw away the 24 because Alok said keep it really simple. So 2 lakhs, if it increased by 100, would become 2 crores. And if it increased by 1,000, it becomes 20 crores. So the money he saves in at the age of 22, that money at the age of 92 is 20 crores. But then at the age of 23, he saves another 2 lakhs. And that also becomes close to 20 crores. And you keep going. So what you can clearly see is that at the age of 92, Alok will be incredibly wealthy. And he did not need to understand much about investing. What he can do is he can buy in the Indian stock markets, he can buy a broad index fund, like let's say the Nifty 50. There's a mutual funds or ETFs that allow you to own that group of stocks at a very low cost. And he doesn't need to really understand how to invest or anything, just buys the ETF or buys the mutual fund and forgets about it. And then every year the 2 lakhs is being added to the same mutual fund. And so just like the chessboard, this is what happens. So now let's look at someone like Warren Buffett. I told you Alok is moving from one square to the next square in 7 years. In the case of Warren Buffett, he was born in 1930. And he started his compounding engine in 1950 at the age of 20. And in 1950, he had 7 lakhs, $10,000. And he was going to the next square on the chessboard, not every 7 years, but every 2.5 years. So let's say I have $10,000 and it's 1950 and now it's 2020. 70 years have gone by. And in 10 years, he gets to the 4th square. And in 70 years, he gets to the 28th square. Okay. Now, what is 2 to the power of 28? My mother told me, mota hisab karo. We know that 2 to the power of 10 is 1024. Let's think it's 1000. So 2 to the power of 20 is 1000 times 1000. It's 1 million. And 2 to the power of 30 is 1 billion. 2 to the power of 29 is 500 million. And 2 to the power of 28 is 250 million. So if he had $1, it would be $250 million. But he didn't have $1, he had $10,000. So that became 250 billion with 1,000 and then another 10, it's 2.5 trillion. Okay. 2.5 trillion is more than the GDP of India. The GDP of India, all the goods and service produced by more than the 1.1 billion Indians is about 2 trillion. And so now in the later years, he was not able to compound every 2.5 years. He was moving to the next square. It slowed down after a while to every 3 years, then every 4 years, then every 5 years, and so on. It slowed down, but it did not stop him from becoming the wealthiest person on the planet. So देखो अभी 330, there are 335 attendees left. We lost 60 and now 61 attendees who are not interested, Alok, in making money. I'm so sorry to inform you of that. वो कहते हैं ना गालिब, ये ना थी हमारी किस्मत. So The key to life is to understand the chess story, is to understand that the idea is to maximize the length of the runway, which is start as early as you can, live as long a life as you can, and then do not interrupt the compounding. The good news now is that the number of people attending is going up. People have decided this is an important lesson. Hallelujah. Wonderful. Let's go to the next question. So the stock market, Tane, is an auction-driven market. It is similar to the mandi where wheat is sold or sugarcane is sold. Even though now in India, there are attempts being made, which I think is very good, to take away the power of the mandis. That's good. So when a farmer takes his wheat to the mandi, the price he gets for the wheat depends on what the different buyers are competing with each other to get that wheat, and the different farmers who are trying to compete with him to sell their wheat. And through all of that, there's a price discovery, and the wheat sells at a certain price. And tomorrow, that wheat may sell at a different price. The same thing happens in the stock market. Prices are determined in an auction setting by different buyers and sellers. So if suddenly there is COVID, stocks will go down. If suddenly there's some terrorist attack on some Air Force base in India, stocks will go down, and so on. And then many times there's lots of good news that comes out, and stocks will go up. So that's the reason they go up and down.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think I think checklists are fantastic. I think just constantly, making sure that you have to-do lists. That's very helpful, and being able to, I guess, just sense check your to-do lists on a daily basis to make sure that it's reflecting the priorities that you need to do for that day. But I think writing everything down is extremely important because you often think that you can, record things in your brain and you forget. And so I think it's important to write things down and just follow kind of very simple, basic to-do lists. And that's a good start.
Very good, Fahad. The other thing you can do, Sahitya, is that in your batch at Bangalore, I think there are about 240 kids. So you look at the kids who are doing well, your classmates who are doing well, and who seem to be well organized. And what you should do is you should spend more time with them, observe them carefully, and try to copy their approach to being organized and getting things done. And that can also be helpful, but it's a good question. Well, Minnie, that's a great question. And I think that your ability to help right now is somewhat limited because you are in a boarding school focused on your JE prep and such. Certainly you could, if you have the time, you could help the younger kids in the school because they have not been in school for a long time, etc. So to it doesn't need to be a large number. It could be one student who you're trying to help catch up or so on. But I think the thing is that the key is to identify things that you think are things that you are passionate about. And then there are things that you have an interest in, and then just pursue them. Don't worry about the size and the scale. We cannot change the world, but we can change the world for one person, and for 10 people, and for 100 people, and so on. So I think that's the focus, is narrow down, and then the answer becomes relatively obvious. तो विक्रमजीत, आपको तो ऐसा मैंने ज्ञान दे दिया है already, so I think you are in good shape. And Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner, and some of you are in the Charles T. Munger Hall, he has a quote. He says, "Never interrupt compounding unnecessarily." So एक बार गाड़ी पटरी पे लग गई with the 7-year going to next square, don't mess that up by taking the money and buying a motorcycle. I met a Dakshana scholar a few years back at JNV Bangalore, and he had a very impressive motorcycle. And he had an even more impressive helmet and motorcycle jacket. So I asked him how much those things cost. And of course, it shocked me how much they cost. And then I asked him if he is saving any money. He said, "No, sir, it is all focused on the motorcycle." And so you have choices to make. Either you can have a fancy motorcycle, or you can be on the compounding engine. It may be possible to do both, but just be careful not to delay or defer the compounding engine. Well, the Dakshana 2.0 program is being held actually in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. It's a pilot program. We're working with Khan Academy. We are experimenting. So we don't know the outcome of that, but it looks pretty good so far. And the idea is to leverage technology and dramatically improve the quality of math education in a large number of schools. And we will find out in a few years how well we are doing at that. So Sanket Patel from Kolhapur says, "Sir, I don't have a question. I'm here to give you a lot of thanks. Because of you, we are getting this very important and costly exam preparation without any fees. So I promise you, sir, we will do our best in future. We will also do such a social work as much as possible." That is wonderful, Sanket. Wish you all the best. Well, Akshay, that's wonderful. I think the important thing is to pursue your passion. If you have a passion for farming, then that is what you should pursue. And so I'm very happy to see. I mean, I think that a lot of people, a lot of scholars I meet, they focus on wanting to join an IT firm, and they focus on a very narrow kind of range of things that they want to do. It's important to try to explore a little further what you may have an interest in, and then take it from there. And so if you have an interest in agriculture and engineering, I think in a country like India, it has tremendous scope. I think food processing and agricultural engineering and improvements in agriculture, since it's such a large part of the economy, is excellent and amazing. And I think there's lots of good work you can do on that front. So that's wonderful. So Soumya, yes, absolutely, it is possible. And in fact, we have had Dakshana scholars who have created startups They have been funded by venture capitalists and so on. And they have, in one case, I know that the person was doing a degree in IIT Madras and dropped out and went full time to a startup, and he got venture funded and so on. I'm not recommending all of you drop out, but it worked out well for him. So I think one of the things about the Dakshana program, and even for the JNV program, the JNV program is designed to help level the playing field, to take zeros and make them into heroes, and to make it so that your education is vastly better than the education your parents had, and such. So just like JNV raises the bar, I mean, once you have a degree from an IIT or from a good medical school and so on, at that point, where you have come from becomes less relevant, and you have got a platform to achieve a lot in the future. And so if some rich person joins IIT and you join IIT, by the time both of you finish, the range of opportunities both of you have may not be that different. And that is what excites me about Dakshana. So definitely, I think mobility, upward mobility has been difficult in India, but I think it's much easier for Dakshana scholars than JNV students. Well, Bhajan and your family, welcome to this Dakshana Day broadcast. So many people are surprised to learn that I am not Gujarati. When I meet some Gujarati people, I can fool them for about 10 minutes because I tell them Kem cho, Maja macho, and then very soon they discover beyond that I'm a fraud. So I am not a Gujarati. It did not affect my ability to be a good business person or good investor. So your background and where you come from in Bihar has nothing to do with whether or not you can be a good entrepreneur or business person. It just depends on what your interests are. If you have an interest in this area, so the Upanishads say, this is not me saying it, the Upanishads are saying it. The Upanishads say that your deepest desire is your destiny. And in fact, the entire quote about the Upanishads, if I can pull it up, let me see if I can see. Let me see if I can pull it up, then I can give you the whole quote. Yeah. So the entire quote by the Upanishads is, as is your desire, so is your intention. As is your intention, so is your will. And as is your will, so is your deed. And as is your deed, so is your destiny. All I did was enter deepest desire Upanishad into God Google, and God Google gave me the rest. So if you are really interested in something, it doesn't matter if it is to go to Mars, it will happen. If तन मन धन से आप कुछ चाहते हो तो वो डेफिनेटली होएगा. I definitely have plans. For 8 months, I have not been able to leave the United States or even really travel much anywhere. And I may not be able to do that maybe for another 8 months or so. We'll see. We'll see when the world starts opening up. And once the world opens up, I hope to visit all the JNV locations and Dakshana Valley. And I have had many, many good times at Rangareddy. So I'm really looking forward to whenever I come to Hyderabad. I love the Hyderabadi biryani and I love the Irani tea. And I love meeting the scholars. So Alantavar, देर है अंधेर नहीं है, हम आ रहे हैं. So Arun, this is not in the Upanishads, but there's a saying, if wealth is lost, nothing is lost. And if health is lost, something is lost. And if character is lost, everything is lost. And now we have lost so many attendees that we only left with 264 participants. So such is life. 265, somebody has come back. Thank you. So what happened in March was a perceived loss of wealth. And that doesn't make much difference because I already said if wealth is lost, nothing is lost. Health was fine. Character is fine. Those are the more important things. So, you know, in an investing world, things don't always go up, they go down as well. In 2008-09, we were down like close to 70%. And in March we were down, but we have recovered some since then. So not a problem. Life is okay, no problem. Yes, Nisha, that is the advantage of having founder status and chairman status. And Dakshana is interested in helping the weaker sections of society. It doesn't matter if they are in a government school or a private school, we want to help them. The problem we have is that we face a lot of fraud. So a lot of people misrepresent the income and such to join Dakshana because it's an attractive place to join. The coaching at Dakshana is better than coaching at private coaching institutes. And so we have to have proper processes and methods to make sure that we are helping the people that truly deserve the help. And so the resources are properly spent. And as long as we can do that, they can come from anywhere. That's perfectly fine. No issues. Let's keep going. So one of the largest donor for Dakshana is Prem Vatsa, who is a graduate of IIT Madras, and he's visited both Rangareddy and Bangalore, JNB Rangareddy and Bangalore. And Prem is a good friend of mine. He's a billionaire. He's done extremely well. He came to Canada after finishing at IIT Madras. And he read this particular book, Think and Grow Rich. So one thing about India is the best books to read can be found at railway stations. Whenever you are at a railway station, go to the bookstore. So there are two things about the railway station bookstores. One is the books are very cheap. And the second is they are these timeless classic books because they need those books to sell. They want to stack it high and let it fly. So Think and Grow Rich was a book that Prem Watsa read when he was in IIT Madras. He picked up the book at a railway station. Maybe he picked it up in Hyderabad because he went to school in Hyderabad. His high school was Hyderabad and his father lived in Hyderabad. So maybe it was a journey between Hyderabad and Chennai. And on the train, he read this book, Think and Grow Rich. It's written by a guy called Napoleon Hill. And the book had a profound impact on Prem. It transformed the way that he thought. And so Prem requested that every year, every Dakshana scholar should get a copy of this book and that he will pay for it. And I have not followed up with the team at Dakshana Valley, but I hope we are even now giving the book every year. And we should give it really when the kids finish, not when they are studying. And it's not really about getting rich, even though that's the title. It's giving you a way to think about success and going through life. So it's a good book. And other books that are really good, the best one that I can suggest to you, which is not going to be at any railway station, is Poor Charlie's Almanac. Poor Charlie's Almanac is a book I try to reread every year. And if you never went to college and you just read that book and understood it, it is better than any college degree. So let's keep going. So Kapil, I'm very happy that you are applying the principle of reciprocity. It is a powerful mental model. One time when I met Warren Buffett, I told him, Mr. Buffett, you are such a good judge of humans. How come you're able to judge people so well? So he said, Mohnish, I am not a good judge of people. If you put me in a room with 100 people and I had a chance to meet all of them, all I could tell you was that 4 people are really good and 4 people are really bad. And the other 92, I would not be able to have an opinion on them. There's not enough data. And he said, the way I go through my life is I only bring the 4 good people in my life. So, and this is critical. So he said, I do not give benefit of doubt to the 92 people that I do not know enough about. So this is an unfair way to judge people or allow them into your lives. But one of the things you have to do in life is you have to be a harsh grader. So if a person exhibits traits or tendencies that you don't like or appreciate, then what you should be doing is not have those people in your circle. Take them out. And at the same time, if people are very high quality, you want to make sure they're in your circle. And over time, what will happen is you will have a group of people who are amazing around you. And the people who, like you said, you may got, they didn't reciprocate or whatever else, you can gradually, get them off. There's a gravitational pull. If our best friends are better than us, we will become better. And if our best friends are worse than us, we will become worse. So it is very important that you be a harsh grader, associate with really, really high quality people and set very high standards on that front. And if you cannot figure someone out, don't give them benefit of doubt. Move on. There are plenty of nice people in this world, so you can be a harsh grader. So Yash, this is a good question. And like I said, put 2 lakhs a year into a broad index. And don't worry about the ups and downs. There will be some years it goes up a lot. There's some years it won't do much, and some years it goes down. We don't care about all that. What we care about is, as a long-term basis, it will still keep going up because the underlying businesses are getting bigger and better. And so that's perfectly okay. So don't worry about what happens in 6 months or 1 year or 2 years or whatever. Just keep spending less than you earn, keep saving the money, and let the compounding engine run. All right, and let me continue on to other questions. So Prasun, I don't know that. It could do better than it's doing now. It could do worse than it is doing now. It could get into a lot of serious problems, or it could become far more successful. I am going to try to put things in place which increase the odds that Dakshana has a good future. But generally speaking, a lot of institutions have difficulties in the decades ahead. It's just normal that institutions will go through that because it all depends on the leadership and the environment in that time. So we just do our best and we'll see how that ends up. So that will be the idea there. I'm glad, Saransh, you have such high quality taste in cars. But like I said at the beginning, and like the Buddha said, now, as soon as I mentioned Buddha, my attendance numbers drop. Now we are down to 233 attendees. बुद्धा के बारे में कोई सुनना नहीं चाहता, बस सिर्फ बुगाती के बारे में सुनना चाहते हैं. So the key to happiness, Saransh, is the elimination of desire. If you want to be happy, you need to have less desires. And so you can be happy with the Alto. You may not have a need for the Bugatti, but if you're really passionate about the Bugatti, get a Bugatti. If you can afford it, that's fine. Sai Krishna, these are the type of questions I love to answer. So if you are getting 1.4 crores, you may not need more than 5-10 lakhs to live. 5 lakhs may be enough. Who knows? So if you are passionate about the chessboard and the compounding, and you are able to save 1 crore a year instead of 2 lakhs a year that I told you earlier, then in 70 years, that 1 crore is going to become 1,000 crores at the 10% every 7 years and 10 doubles. And that's only the savings from 1 year. And you can keep going. So that's a good way to go. Sort of, it does not need to be an either or choice. You can be very wealthy and very happy. You can also be very poor and very unhappy, and every combination thereof. So the two are not necessarily linked. The key important thing in life is not so much the focus on the wealth. It has to be a focus that you are pursuing your passion. That's the important thing to do. Aditya, I think, like I had mentioned earlier, what Gandhi says, be the change you wish to see. So it may appear to be a big task to create a hospital, but you can start by creating a clinic. And even before starting creating a clinic, you can, one of my uncles was a doctor, and he put up a sign outside his home saying free treatment for the poor. So if anyone showed up and they said they didn't have money, he didn't care. He would provide them same medical help as he would provide his other patients. So there are a lot of different ways you can get going. I think that if you look at a good model to study for you is the model for Arvind Eye Care. And there's a book called Infinite Vision, which was written by Dr. V's grandniece. And it's a great book, and it explains how Arvind was set up from nothing with no resources and has now become the largest, I think it's the largest eye hospital or eye treatments, and there are many hospitals in India. So you can definitely pursue these dreams. Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, yes, it is very comfortable when you have a good position with a good company to just pursue that path. The key is you have to have a passion. If you really want to set up something that is exciting for you, then you can have your job and do that part-time as long as it doesn't compete with your employer. And you can try to get it going by having some other people who you are in sync with, who bring different skills. You have to try to do this earlier in life. It is easier to do it when you're single than when you're married, and it's easier to do it before you have children. So I think the key is that pursue your dreams, think about some good ideas, think about one or two other team members who could be helpful to you in terms of a joint team to do this, and then just pursue it and see where it goes. When I was working as an employee, I didn't really have much money or anything, but I did know that if I didn't do something then, it would just keep getting harder in the future. And so that's what I tried to do, is basically tried a few startups, and after the second, third attempt, it worked. So you know that I forget the name of the actor who recently committed suicide. I think Sushant Rajput, I think his name is, I'm not sure, but he's the one who played MS Dhoni. So Sushant, actually, I saw an interview where he went through JE prep and then he became an engineer. He actually did well in his engineering, but he always had an interest in acting. So in college also he was participating in plays and acting and things, and eventually decided that's what he wanted to do, and he pursued that. So definitely, if you have an interest in becoming an actor, Sushant can be a good role model. Just don't kill yourself like him. But I think that he was able to navigate from engineering to acting, even though he didn't have a lot of family support and so on. So I think it's worth studying. there's a video of his on YouTube with the lecture he gave at IIT Bombay. It's a good lecture. I think that can be helpful to you. So I would say you should try to listen to that. I would say, Harish, I think, yeah, if you enjoy these subjects, that's wonderful. You should study them. You should focus on the JE, and then you should, like I said, with your professors and friends, think about areas or areas that are still untapped in these fields that you have an interest or passion in, and and that can work out. Tanya, this is a great question. So there is a book which is called Give and Take. It's written by a guy named Adam Grant, and actually he's now a friend of mine. So if you read that book does a good job of explaining the principle of reciprocity. But the thing is to simplify and abbreviate the book. Adam Grant says that there are three kinds of people in this world. There are the givers, there are the takers, and there are the matchers. So the givers are people who do things for others with no interest or desire or plan to get something back. They just want to do good and they don't care, like Gandhi, just trying to do good. So those are the givers. The takers are the ones who try to see how much they can get from different people around them and grab as much as they can, and they don't want to give back. Those are the takers. And the matchers are the ones who are saying, okay, Sandeep did something for me. You know, the other day he gave me 5 rupees for bus fare. I'm going to give him 5 rupees. I'm going to match. So they examine what someone does for them and they try to evenly match that. So what Adam Grant shows is that the people who were the givers, who just did not keep tabs and just tried to help as much as they could other people, ended up being the most successful in life and ended up having the most resources in life. Because what happens is that you build up so much goodwill with other people that everyone wants to help you. And I have found this to be true over and over in different aspects of my life. So, for example, Dakshana was designed to be purely a giving vehicle. It was not designed to give me any benefit. It was just designed that let's try to improve society. And it's a pure undertaking from that point of view. It doesn't have any ulterior motive. But what has happened over the last, I would say, 13 or 14 years since we started Dakshana, is I have gained tremendously from it. I have been able, a lot of people that I would not have been able to become friends with or get to know or have respect from, that has happened. A lot of people think very favorably of me because of that, even though that was not part of the plan. And when I look back, I say that actually the whole thing has been a huge net positive. the best days in the year for me are the days I spend on Dakshana campuses and visiting Dakshana scholars. So there's been so much positive that has come into my life. And one would think that all I'm doing is giving. So I would say that it's very important that you read that book. And it's very important that you become or remain a giver. So Alantravar, the Buddha said that there is no suffering in this world. Now, sometimes when I say this to my friends, they get very angry with me. They'll tell me things like, Buddha don't know nothing. I suffer. I suffer a lot. So I try to explain to them what the Buddha meant. So let's say there's a dog. And let's say the dog has cancer. And let's say that dog is going to die in 30 days. So does the dog know that it is going to die? Probably not. So we can give the dog some morphine, take him to a veterinarian, make him comfortable. And the dog is basically, if you will, living in the moment. The dog is not thinking ahead. And that is the key. That is what Buddha says, live in the moment. And so if I look at this particular second right now with the dog, is he suffering right now? And the answer is no. And then 1 second later, is he suffering? No. And then 30 days from now, he dies and he's gone. Now let's say it's not a dog that has cancer, but it is a human being who has cancer. And this human being is going to die in 30 days. And the human being knows he's going to die in 30 days. So the human being is given morphine and pain has been eased, but the human being is suffering. And the reason the human being is suffering is because the human being is not living in the moment. The human being is thinking ahead that I am going to die. It is so sad. And this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And I have young children, so on and so forth. And the human being is very sad. So what the Buddha says is the event, the event does not cause suffering. It is the reaction to the event that leads to suffering. So the human being has cancer. That's not the cause for the suffering. The human being then starts thinking about his death and going forward and starts suffering and is not living in the moment. And he's thinking about, oh, this will happen or that will happen and all these things. So the reaction to the event is within our control. We as humans have free will and we control the reaction to the event of having cancer. And so the suffering is also within our control. And so the key is there's a book written by Eckhart Tolle, which is called The Power of Now. And this is a core part of the Buddhist philosophy, which is living in the moment. And so if you live in the moment and you truly understand what the Buddha meant by there is no suffering in this world, you will not suffer. you will have a very happy and productive life. And so if you do poorly on a test, that event causes no suffering. When you react to that poor performance on the test, you will suffer. But that reaction is in your control. So I think it's very important to have the mental model or the Buddhists have, which is living in the moment. Well, your motivation, mana, manjari, is in your control. And I think, yes, I mean, I think that um, it is good to have high standards, and it is good not to be satisfied, and it's good to try to becoming better in our time management and getting more things done. I suffer from that too. So many times the day gets over and I feel it was a terrible day. I didn't get enough done. Happens all the time, happens to all of us. Um, but, you know, even with so many days and so many years of not uh, not having adequate adequate performance or adequate things done, the ball got moved down the field, right? If I look back, I can see that Dakshana got created and it has nicely mushroomed and flowered. Even though in the last 14 years, I would say that large number of days I would feel the way you do, that I wish I had gotten more done and wish I had made more strides. So the good news is that even though we feel that way, we still make a lot of progress, and that is wonderful. And so I think it's a good way to go. And now we are at the lowest number of attendees with just 188 diehard humans left listening to me. But this has been a really wonderful session. I very much enjoyed interacting with all of you. We'll try to see if we can make this a annual offering, and I look forward to it. So thank you very much, and have a great day, and congratulations on Dakshana Day. Goodbye.